I never thought I'd be the kind of person to get in over my head. I was always the cautious one, the friend who double-checked the locks, who never jaywalked, who read the terms and conditions before clicking accept. But there's something about the internet, about the way it lets you slip into other skins, that makes you braver, or maybe just dumber, than you'd ever be in real life. That's how I ended up on the dark web, staring at a blinking cursor, my heart pounding in my chest, about to download a game I'd been warned never to touch. It started as a joke, honestly. My friends and I had a group chat where we'd send each other the weirdest, creepiest stuff we could find online. Urban legends, cursed videos, those "don't watch this at 3 a.m. YouTube compilations. It was all fun and games, a way to pass the time and scare ourselves silly. But then one night, after a few too many energy drinks and a dare that went too far, I found myself digging deeper than I ever had before. The game was called The Watcher's Window. I'd never heard of it, but the name alone sent a chill down my spine. The post was buried in a forum that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2012, the kind of place where every other thread was a dead link or a wall of spam. But this one was different. The title was in all caps, "Do not download." The post itself was short, just a few lines. "If you find this, turn back. The Watcher's Window is not a game. It's a curse. People who play it disappear. If you value your life, don't even look for it." Of course, that only made me want to find it more. That's the thing about warnings, they're like red buttons. You know you shouldn't press them, but you can't help yourself. I copied the link at the bottom of the post, half expecting it to be a rickroll or a virus. But it wasn't. It was a download, a tiny file called window.exe. No icon, no description, just a blank white square. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the mouse. I could almost hear my mom's voice in my head, telling me to be careful, to use my common sense. But I was alone in my room, the only light coming from my monitor, the rest of the house silent and still. I told myself it was just a game, just another dumb internet legend. I clicked download. The file was small, less than a megabyte. It finished in seconds. I ran a virus scan, old habits die hard, but nothing came up. I double-clicked the file. For a moment, nothing happened. Then my screen flickered, and a window popped up. It was completely black, except for a single line of white text. "Do you want to see?" I stared at it, my mouth dry. The only options were yes and no. I hovered over no. But my curiosity got the better of me. I clicked yes. The window expanded, filling my screen. For a second, I thought it was just a video, some kind of jump scare. But it wasn't. It was a live feed, grainy and distorted, like it was being filmed on an old security camera. The image was of a room, my room. I could see myself, sitting at my desk, staring at the screen. I spun around, half expecting to see a camera behind me, but there was nothing. Just the empty darkness of my bedroom. I turned back to the screen. The feed was still there, still showing me, but now there was something else. A figure, standing in the corner of the room, just out of the light. I couldn't make out any features, just a tall, shadowy shape. My heart hammered in my chest. I whipped around again, but the corner was empty. When I looked back at the screen, the figure was gone. The feed flickered, then went black. Another line of text appeared. "You have been seen." I slammed my laptop shut, my hands shaking. I told myself it was a trick, some kind of augmented reality prank. Maybe the game used my webcam. Maybe it was all just code. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure in the corner, watching me. I kept telling myself it was just a game, just a stupid internet hoax. But the next morning, when I opened my laptop, the file was gone. Not just deleted, erased, like it had never existed. My antivirus logs were empty. My browser history was wiped. It was like the whole thing had been a dream. But then the messages started. The first one came through my email, from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was blank. The body was just a single sentence. We are watching. I deleted it, thinking it was spam. But then another came, this time to my phone. No number, just a string of random characters. The message was the same, we are watching. I tried to laugh it off, to tell myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe one of my friends had found out about the game and was messing with me. But when I asked them, they all swore they had no idea what I was talking about. They hadn't even heard of the Watcher's window. That's when the dream started. Every night, I'd find myself back in that room, sitting at my desk, staring at the screen. The figure would be there, always in the corner, always watching. Sometimes it would move closer, its shape growing clearer, but I could never see its face. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my heart racing, convinced that if I turned around, I'd see it standing behind me. That I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I stopped leaving my room. My friends noticed, of course. They started texting me, asking if I was okay, if I wanted to hang out. I ignored them. I didn't want to risk dragging them into this. Whatever I'd unleashed, it was my problem, but the messages kept coming. They started showing up in places they shouldn't have. On my bathroom mirror, written in condensation, we are watching. On the inside of my car window, traced in dust. Even on my phone's lock screen, flashing for a split second before disappearing. That I tried everything. I wiped my devices, changed my passwords, even bought a new phone. Nothing worked. The messages always found me. One night, I decided I'd had enough. I was going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what. I dug out my old laptop, the one I hadn't used in years, and set it up in the living room. I connected to the internet, found my way back to the forum where I'd found the game. The post was gone. The entire thread had been deleted. I searched for hours, digging through cached pages, old screenshots, anything I could find. But it was like the game had never existed. I was about to give up when I got a new message, this time in a chat window I didn't recognize. The username was just a string of numbers. The message was simple, you want answers. Meet me. There was an address, a time, midnight, of course. I knew it was a bad idea. Every horror movie, every urban legend, every ounce of common sense screamed at me to stay home, to forget about the game, to move on with my life. But I couldn't. I had to know. The address was in an industrial part of town, a place I'd never been before. I parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the way, my heart pounding in my chest. The building was old, abandoned, the windows boarded up. But the door was unlocked. Inside, it was pitch black. I used my phone's flashlight to find my way, the beam cutting through the dust and darkness. I followed the sound of footsteps, echoing down a long hallway. At the end, I found a man sitting on a folding chair, his face hidden in shadow. You played the game, he said, his voice low and rough. I nodded, my throat dry. What is it? What did I do? He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You open the window. That's all it takes. Once you see them, they see you. Who are they? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shook his head. No one knows. Some say they're watchers, some say there's something else. All I know is, once you're marked, you can't go back. I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin. How do I stop it? He looked up, and for the first time I saw his face, pale, gaunt, eyes ringed with dark circles. You can't. All you can do is run. Or you can play again. I stared at him, not understanding. Play again. He nodded. The game's still out there. It finds you when it wants to. If you play again, maybe you can pass it on. Maybe you can break the chain. Or maybe you just make it worse. I backed away, my mind racing. I don't want to play. I just want this to stop. He shrugged. We all do. But it never does. I turned and ran, the sound of his laughter echoing after me. I didn't stop until I was back in my car, my hands shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. When I got home, I found a new message waiting for me. This time, it was a video. I clicked play, my stomach twisting with dread. It was footage of me, walking into the building, talking to the man. But in the background, just behind me, I could see the figure from the game, standing in the shadows, watching. I slammed my laptop shut, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I knew then that it was never going to end. I was being watched, and there was nothing I could do about it. but I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet that I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure from the video, lurking just behind me, its presence as real and suffocating as the darkness pressing in on my room. I kept the lights on, the TV blaring some late-night infomercial, but nothing could drown out the sense that I was being observed. I kept glancing at the corners, at the shadows under my desk, at the window where the streetlight cast long, trembling shapes across the floor. I tried to tell myself it was just paranoia, that I was letting my imagination get the best of me, but deep down I knew better. I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to see, and now it was seeing me. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face anyone, not with the bags under my eyes and the tremor in my hands. I spent the day researching, digging through every forum, every archive, every dark corner of the internet I could find. I looked for stories like mine, for anyone who had played the Watcher's window and lived to tell about it. Most of what I found was vague, rumors, half-remembered posts, warnings to stay away. But every so often, I'd stumble across something that felt real. A comment buried in a thread. If you see the window, don't look away. A blog post that ended abruptly, the last line unfinished. A video with the title, "I'm sorry," and nothing but static. I started to notice patterns. The people who played the game all described the same things. The live feed, the figure in the corner, the messages that followed. Some said they'd managed to get rid of it by destroying their devices, moving to new cities, changing their names. But most just disappeared, their accounts going dark, their friends posting desperate pleas for information that were never answered. That I tried to reach out to a few of them, sending messages to old email addresses, leaving comments on abandoned blogs. I didn't expect a response, but I had to try. I needed to know if there was a way out, if anyone had beaten the game. Days passed with no reply. Meanwhile, the messages kept coming. They started to get more personal. Instead of "we are watching," I'd get things like "nice shirt today," or "you should really lock your door." Once, I found a photo attached, a picture of me, taken from outside my window, my face lit up by the glow of my laptop. I lived on the 3rd floor. There was no fire escape, no balcony, just a sheer drop to the alley below. That I started to lose track of time. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I'd heard footsteps in the hall, only to find nothing but silence. I'd catch glimpses of movement in the corner of my eye, shadows that vanished when I turned to look. My friends kept texting, kept calling, but I ignored them. I didn't want to drag them into this. I didn't want to risk them ending up like me. But isolation only made things worse. The less I slept, the more the lines between reality and nightmare began to blur. I'd find myself staring at the screen for hours, waiting for the next message, the next sign that I wasn't alone. Sometimes I'd see the figure reflected in the glass, standing just behind me, its face always hidden, its eyes, if it had eyes, locked on mine. One night, I snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my laptop and smashed it against the wall, over and over, until the screen shattered and the keys flew off in all directions. I tore apart my phone, ripped the battery out, threw it all in the trash. I unplugged my router, yanked every cord from the wall, sat in the dark with nothing but the sound of my own ragged breathing. For a while, it was quiet. No messages, no photos, no signs that I was being watched. I started to think maybe I'd done it. Maybe I'd broken the chain. I let myself hope. But hope is a dangerous thing. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name written in neat, blocky letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded in half. On it, in the same handwriting, were 3 words, "We are watching." Taped to the bottom was a Polaroid photo, me, asleep in my bed, the figure standing over me, its hand reaching out toward my face. I dropped the letter, my hands shaking so badly I could barely breathe. I stumbled to the bathroom and threw up, the taste of bile burning my throat. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My eyes were bloodshot, my skin pale and drawn. I looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks, someone who was being hunted. I knew then that it wasn't about the devices. It wasn't about the internet. The game had marked me, and there was no escaping it that I started to see the figure everywhere. In the reflection of a store window as I walked down the street. In the back seat of a bus, staring at me through the crowd. Once, I saw it standing in the middle of a crosswalk, its head tilted to the side, as if it was studying me. No one else seemed to notice. People walked right past it, their eyes sliding over the empty space where it stood that I tried to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't there, but it was always watching, always waiting. One night, I decided to confront it. I sat in my room, the lights off, the window open to the cool night air. I waited, my heart pounding, my hands clenched into fists. I stared at the corner where it always appeared, willing it to show itself. Hours passed. The city outside grew quiet, the sounds of traffic fading into silence. I was about to give up when I saw it, a shadow, darker than the rest, coalescing in the corner. It stood there, silent and still, its presence pressing down on me like a weight that I forced myself to speak. "What do you want?" My voice was barely more than a whisper. The figure didn't move. It didn't speak. It just watched. I tried again, louder this time. "Why are you doing this to me?" "Nothing. Just silence." I felt something snap inside me. I stood up, my legs shaking, and took a step toward it. "Leave me alone," I shouted. I didn't do anything. I just played a stupid game. The figure tilted its head, as if considering my words. Then, slowly, it raised its hand and pointed at me. I stumbled back, tripping over my chair, landing hard on the floor. The figure took a step forward, its form growing clearer in the dim light. I could see the outline of its face now, blank, featureless, like a mannequin. Its eyes were just empty holes, black and endless. I scrambled to my feet and ran, out of my room, down the hall, out into the street. I didn't stop running until I was blocks away, my lungs burning, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I spent the night wandering the city, afraid to go home, afraid to stop moving. Every time I looked over my shoulder, I saw the figure, always just out of reach, always watching. As dawn broke, I found myself in a diner, hunched over a cup of coffee, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the mug. The waitress gave me a concerned look, but I ignored her. I just needed to think, to figure out what to do next. That's when I saw the man from the abandoned building, sitting in a booth across the room. He looked worse than before, paler, thinner, his eyes sunken deep into his skull. He beckoned me over with a nod that I slid into the booth, my nerves raw. "You said there was a way to break the chain," I said, my voice hoarse. He shook his head. I said maybe. No one really knows. I leaned in, desperate. "Please, I can't live like this. There has to be something I can do." He studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "There's a theory. Some people think if you can get someone else to play, the watchers move on. But it's just a theory, and it's not exactly ethical." I recoiled. "You mean I have to curse someone else? That's insane." He shrugged. "Desperate people do desperate things. That's how the game spreads." I sat back, my stomach churning. I couldn't do that. I couldn't drag someone else into this nightmare. He slid a piece of paper across the table. On it was a list of names, email addresses, phone numbers. These are people who've played before. Some of them might know more. Some of them might be able to help. I took the paper, my hands trembling. "Why are you helping me?" He smiled, a sad, tired smile. "Because someone helped me once. And because I know what it's like to be watched." I left the diner, the list clutched in my hand. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't give up. Not yet. I started reaching out to the people on the list, one by one. Most didn't respond. Some emails bounced back, addresses no longer in use. A few replied, their messages short and cryptic. "Don't trust anyone. It never ends. If you see the window, close your eyes." But one message stood out. It was from someone named Alex. The email was simple. "Meet me. Tonight. 10 p.m., the old train station." I hesitated, remembering what happened the last time I followed a stranger's instructions. But I was out of options. I needed answers. That night, I made my way to the train station, my nerves on edge. The place was deserted, the only light coming from a flickering street lamp. I waited, my breath fogging in the cold air. After what felt like an eternity, a figure approached. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. "You're the one who played the game," she said, her voice low. I nodded. "You too." She nodded. "A long time ago. I've been running ever since." I swallowed hard. "Is there a way out?" She shook her head. "Not really, but there are ways to cope, ways to keep them at bay." I leaned in, desperate. "How?" She glanced around, as if making sure we were alone. "You have to follow the rules. Don't look at them directly. Don't acknowledge them. Don't talk about them to people who haven't played. And whatever you do, don't try to record them. They hate that." I frowned. "What happens if you break the rules?" She looked away, her face pale. "Bad things. People disappear. Or worse." I shivered. "Why does the game exist? Who made it?" She shrugged. "No one knows. Some say it's older than the internet, that it's just using the web as a new way to spread. All I know is, once you're marked, you're never really free." I felt a wave of despair wash over me. "So that's it. I just have to live like this forever." She put a hand on my shoulder. "You learn to live with it. You find ways to cope, and you try not to let it consume you." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I left the station, I felt the figure watching me from the shadows, its gaze heavy on my back. But for the first time, I didn't run. I walked home, my head held high, determined to survive. The days that followed were a blur. I tried to return to some semblance of normalcy, but nothing felt the same. Every shadow seemed deeper, every silence heavier. I followed Alex's advice as best I could, never looking directly at the figure, never speaking about it to anyone who hadn't played, never trying to record or photograph it. I kept my head down, my eyes averted, my mouth shut. It was like living with a wild animal in the house, always aware of its presence, always careful not to provoke it. But even as I tried to adapt, the watchers found new ways to remind me they were there. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night to find my bedroom door ajar, even though I was sure I'd locked it. Other times, I'd find objects in my apartment moved ever so slightly, a book turned upside down, a glass shifted to the edge of the counter, my keys placed in the freezer. Once, I found a single black feather on my pillow, slick and cold to the touch. I started keeping a journal, writing down everything that happened, every strange occurrence, every fleeting glimpse of the figure. It helped, in a way. Putting it all on paper made it feel less overwhelming, less like I was losing my mind. But it also made the fear more real, more permanent. Every entry was a reminder that I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I tried to reach out to Alex again, but her email bounced back. I called the number she'd given me, but it was disconnected. It was like she'd vanished, swallowed up by the same darkness that was stalking me. I wondered if she'd broken one of the rules, if she'd looked too long or spoken to the wrong person. The thought made my skin crawl. I started to notice changes in myself, too. I was jumpier, more paranoid. I flinched at sudden noises, avoided mirrors, kept the curtains drawn at all times. I stopped going out at night, stopped answering the door, stopped trusting anyone I didn't know. My friends kept reaching out, their concern growing with every unanswered text, every missed call. I wanted to tell them the truth, to warn them, but I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk dragging them into this hell. One afternoon, I got a call from my mom. I almost didn't answer, but something in her voicemail, something in the way she said my name, made me pick up. "Hey, honey," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "I just wanted to check in. You haven't called in a while. Is everything okay?" I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. "Yeah, Mom. I'm fine. Just busy with work." She didn't sound convinced. "You know you can talk to me, right? About anything." I swallowed hard. "I know. Thanks, Mom." We talked for a few more minutes, about nothing in particular. When I hung up, I felt a pang of guilt. I hated lying to her, but what else could I do? How could I explain that I was being haunted by something I couldn't even name? That night, I dreamed of the Watchers again. This time, there were more of them, Dozens, maybe hundreds, all standing in a circle around me, their faces blank, their eyes empty. They didn't move, didn't speak. They just watched, their silence more terrifying than any scream. I woke up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, tried to steady my breathing. When I looked up, I saw the figure standing behind me in the mirror, its hand resting on my shoulder. I spun around, but the bathroom was empty and I started to wonder if I was losing my mind. Maybe there was no game, no watchers, no curse. Maybe it was all in my head, a product of too many sleepless nights and too much time spent alone. But then I'd find another message, another photo, another sign that I wasn't imagining things. One morning, I found a USB drive taped to my front door. No note, no explanation, just a plain black stick. Against my better judgment, I plugged it into my laptop. There was only one file on it, a video, time-stamped the night before. The footage was grainy, shot from a high angle, like a security camera. It showed me, asleep in my bed, tossing and turning. The figure stood at the foot of the bed, watching me. At one point, it leaned in close, its face inches from mine. I watched, horrified, as my sleeping self shivered and pulled the covers tighter. The figure straightened, turned to the camera, and raised a finger to its lips that I yanked the drive out, my hands shaking. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but sit there and watch. But I couldn't move. I was frozen, trapped by fear. That day, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living like this. I had to do something, anything, to break the cycle. I remembered what the man in the diner had said, about passing the curse on, about finding someone else to play. The thought made me sick, but I couldn't ignore it. Desperate people do desperate things that I started researching again, looking for anyone who might know more. I found a forum dedicated to urban legends and internet mysteries, a place where people shared stories about haunted websites, cursed videos, and games that should never be played. I posted my story, leaving out the most personal details, and asked if anyone had heard of the Watcher's Window. The responses were immediate. Some people called me a liar, accused me of making it all up for attention. Others shared their own stories, eerily similar to mine. A few offered advice: burn sage, wear a silver necklace, recite prayers before bed. But one message stood out. It was from a user named Window Seeker. "I know what you're going through," the message read. "I played the game too. There's a way to fight back, but it's risky. If you're interested, meet me tomorrow night at the old library." Midnight. I hesitated, remembering what happened the last time I followed a stranger's instructions. But I was out of options. I needed answers. The next night, I made my way to the library, my nerves on edge. The building was dark and silent, the windows boarded up, the doors chained shut. But one window on the ground floor was open, just enough for me to slip inside. I found myself in a maze of dusty shelves and crumbling books, the air thick with the smell of mold and decay. I wandered through the stacks, my flashlight casting long, trembling shadows on the walls. At the far end of the building, I found a figure waiting for me. It was a woman, maybe in her 40s, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes sharp and wary. She introduced herself as Mara. "You're the one from the forum," she said, her voice low. I nodded. "You said there was a way to fight back." She glanced around, as if making sure we were alone. "There is, but it's dangerous, and it doesn't always work." I swallowed hard. "I'll do anything. I can't keep living like this." She nodded, her expression grim. The Watchers feed on fear. The more you're afraid, the stronger they get. But if you can face them, really face them, they lose their power. It's not easy. Most people can't do it. But if you're willing to try, I can show you how. I hesitated, the memory of the figure's blank face burning in my mind. "What do I have to do?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, battered notebook. "This is a ritual. It's old, older than the internet, maybe older than the Watchers themselves. You have to perform it at the place where you first saw them. You have to look them in the eye and refuse to be afraid. If you can do that, they'll leave you alone. But if you fail..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I took the notebook, my hands trembling. Thank you. She nodded. Be careful. And whatever happens, don't run. That's when they get you. I left the library, the notebook clutched in my hand. I spent the next day preparing, reading and rereading the ritual, trying to steel myself for what was to come. That night, I returned to my apartment, the place where I'd first seen the Watchers. I turned off all the lights, closed the curtains, and sat in the center of the room. That I opened the notebook and began to read aloud, my voice shaking. The words were strange, ancient, their meaning lost to time. As I spoke, the air grew colder, the shadows deeper. I felt the Watchers gathering, their presence pressing in on me from all sides. That I forced myself to keep going, to keep reading, even as my fear threatened to overwhelm me. I could see the figure now, standing in the corner, its eyes locked on mine. I met its gaze, refusing to look away. I'm not afraid of you, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. You don't control me. You don't own me. The figure took a step forward, its form growing clearer. I could see its face now, still blank, still featureless, but somehow more human. It tilted its head, as if considering my words. I'm not afraid, I repeated, louder this time. You can't hurt me. For a moment, nothing happened. The figure stood there, silent and still. Then, slowly, it began to fade, its form dissolving into the shadows. The air grew warmer, the pressure lifting from my chest. I sat there for a long time, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. When I finally stood up, the room felt lighter, the shadows less menacing. I knew it wasn't over, not really. The Watchers were still out there, still waiting. But for the first time, I felt like I had a fighting chance. I started to rebuild my life, little by little. I reached out to my friends, apologized for my silence, tried to explain as best I could without breaking the rules. I went back to work, started going out again, tried to find joy in the little things, but I never forgot the Watchers. I never let my guard down. And every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of a shadow in the corner of my eye, a reminder that I was never truly alone. The weeks that followed the ritual were the strangest of my life. I'd expected some dramatic change, some clear sign that the Watchers were gone or that I was finally free. But the truth was subtler, more ambiguous. The oppressive weight that had haunted my apartment seemed to lift, and the shadows in the corners no longer felt quite so deep. I could sleep through the night again, most nights, and when I dreamed, the Watchers were further away, their faces blurred, their presence less suffocating. But the fear never left completely. It lingered at the edges of my mind, a constant reminder that I'd seen something I wasn't meant to see, that I'd played a game I was never meant to play. I kept the notebook Mara had given me tucked away in a drawer, its pages worn from my constant rereading. Sometimes, late at night, I'd take it out and run my fingers over the words, as if they could protect me from what lurked in the dark. I started to reach out to others who had played the game, using the list the man in the diner had given me. Most never responded, but a few did. We formed a kind of support group, meeting online in encrypted chat rooms, sharing our stories, our fears, our coping strategies. Some had managed to perform the ritual and found relief, like I had. Others weren't so lucky. They spoke of Watchers that grew more aggressive, more persistent, of friends and family who vanished without a trace. One night, a new member joined our chat. Their username was Glassies. They didn't say much at first, just listened as the rest of us talked. But after a while, they started to share their own story. It was eerily similar to mine, finding the game on a forgotten forum, seeing the live feed, receiving the messages. But there was one difference. Glassies claimed to have found the source of the game. They said it wasn't just a file, or a website, or even a curse. It was a network, a web of connections stretching back decades, maybe longer. The Watchers weren't just haunting individuals. They were collecting data, building a map of everyone who had ever played, everyone who had ever seen them. And the more people who played, the stronger they became. The rest of us were skeptical, but Glassies was insistent. They claimed to have traced the game's code back to a server hidden deep in the dark web, protected by layers of encryption and firewalls. They said they were close to breaking through, to finding out who, or what, was behind it all. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to think there was a way to fight back, to end the Watchers once and for all. But I also knew the risks. Every time someone tried to dig too deep, they disappeared. Their accounts went dark. Their names vanished from our list. It was as if the Watchers were erasing them from existence. Still, I couldn't help but be drawn in. I started working with Glassies, helping them sift through the code, searching for patterns, for clues. We spent hours each night poring over lines of gibberish, following breadcrumbs through abandoned forums and encrypted chat logs. The deeper we went, the stranger things became. We found references to the game dating back to the early days of the internet, Usenet posts, BBS messages, even old newspaper clippings scanned and uploaded by anonymous users. The stories were always the same: a mysterious file, a live feed, a figure in the shadows. But there were other details, too. Some spoke of rituals, like the one Mara had given me. Others mentioned symbols, circles, eyes, windows, drawn in chalk or carved into wood. A few even claimed to have seen the Watchers in the real world, long before the game ever existed. The more we learned, the more I started to believe that the Watchers weren't just a product of the internet. They were something older, something that had been waiting for a way to spread, to reach more people. The game was just their latest tool. One night, Glassies messaged me in a panic. They'd found something, an address, hidden in the code, buried under layers of encryption. It was a physical location, not far from where I lived. They wanted me to check it out, to see if there was anything there. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to stay away, to leave well enough alone. But curiosity and a desperate need for answers got the better of me. I agreed to go, promising to keep them updated every step of the way. The address led me to an old warehouse on the edge of town, long abandoned, its windows boarded up, its doors chained shut. I circled the building, looking for a way in. Eventually, I found a broken window at the back, just big enough to squeeze through. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. My flashlight cast long, trembling shadows on the walls, illuminating piles of broken furniture and stacks of rotting boxes. I moved carefully, my heart pounding in my chest, every nerve on edge. At the far end of the warehouse, I found a door, half hidden behind a stack of crates. It was old, the paint peeling, the wood warped with age. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was small, barely more than a closet. In the center was a table, covered in old computer equipment, monitors, keyboards, tangled wires. On the wall behind the table was a map, covered in pins and strings, connecting cities and names and dates. At the center of the web was a single word, Watchers. I took photos of everything, my hands shaking. As I turned to leave, I heard a noise behind me, a soft, shuffling sound, like footsteps on concrete. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. There, in the doorway, stood the figure. It was taller than I remembered, its face still blank, its eyes still empty. It didn't move, didn't speak. It just watched. I backed away, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I fumbled for my phone, trying to call Glassies, but the screen was dead, the battery drained. I was alone. The figure took a step forward, its form growing clearer in the dim light. I could see its hands now, long, thin fingers, tipped with black nails. It raised one hand and pointed at the map on the wall. I followed its gaze, my eyes tracing the lines and pins. At the edge of the map, I saw my own name, written in red ink, connected by a string to dozens of others. I realized then that I wasn't just a victim. I was part of the network, part of the web the Watchers had built. The figure lowered its hand and stepped back, fading into the shadows. I stood there for a long moment, my mind racing. I didn't know what it meant or what I was supposed to do, but I knew I couldn't turn back. I left the warehouse, my pockets full of photos and my head full of questions. I sent everything to Glassies, hoping they could make sense of it. For days, I waited for a response, but none came. Their account went dark, their messages unanswered. Another name, another string, cut from the web. I started to feel the Watchers closing in again. The shadows in my apartment grew deeper, the air heavier. I saw the figure more often now, always just out of reach, always watching. I tried to perform the ritual again, but it didn't work. The words felt hollow, the power gone. I realized then that the Watchers weren't just feeding on fear, they were feeding on connection, on the network they'd built. The more we tried to fight them, the stronger they became. I reached out to the others in our support group, sharing what I'd found. Some were hopeful, others terrified. A few wanted to keep digging, to find the source and destroy it. But most just wanted to survive, to find a way to live with the Watchers without being consumed. I started to think about the people I'd met along the way. The man in the diner, Mara, Alex, Glassies. All of them had tried to fight back, to break the chain. All of them had paid a price. I wondered if I was next. One night, I sat in my apartment, the lights off, the curtains drawn. I stared at the map I'd recreated on my wall, tracing the lines and names with my finger. I thought about the Watchers, about the game, about the web that connected us all. I realized then that I had a choice. I could keep running, keep hiding, keep trying to fight a battle I couldn't win. Or I could accept the Watchers, accept the fear, and try to live my life in spite of them. I chose the latter. I started to rebuild my life, one day at a time. I went back to work, reconnected with my friends, tried to find joy in the little things. I kept the Watchers at the edge of my vision, never looking directly at them, never acknowledging their presence. I learned to live with the fear, to let it sharpen my senses rather than dull them. And every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of the figure in the corner of my eye, a reminder that I was never truly alone. But I didn't let it control me. I didn't let it win. I was still being watched, but I was also watching back. Months passed. The seasons changed, and with them, the rhythm of my life. I learned to live with the Watchers, to let their presence become a background hum rather than a constant scream. I kept my routine simple, predictable. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, watched TV. I called my mom every Sunday, met friends for coffee, took long walks in the park. I tried to be present, to savor the moments of peace when they came. But the Watchers never left. They lingered at the edges of my vision, their forms flickering in the periphery. Sometimes, I'd catch a glimpse of the figure standing across the street, or reflected in a shop window, or sitting at the back of a crowded bus. No one else ever seemed to notice. It was as if I existed in two worlds at once, the ordinary world everyone else saw, and the shadow world of the Watchers. That I kept in touch with the support group, though our numbers dwindled over time. Some people stopped logging in, their accounts going silent. Others posted frantic messages before disappearing for good. A few, like me, learned to adapt, to live with the Watchers without letting them take over. One night, I got a message from a new member. Their username was Night Window. They said they'd just played the game, that they were terrified, that they didn't know what to do. I recognized the panic in their words, the desperate need for answers. I remembered what it felt like to be alone, to think you were losing your mind. I replied, offering advice, reassurance, the same words others had given me. Don't look at them directly. Don't talk about them to people who haven't played. Don't try to record them. You're not alone. We're here for you. Night Window responded with gratitude, their relief palpable even through the screen. We talked for hours, sharing stories, fears, coping strategies. I realized then how important the group had become to me, not just as a source of information, but as a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this. As the weeks went by, Night Window became a regular presence in the chat. They were smart, resourceful, quick to offer support to others. They reminded me of myself, back when this all started, curious, determined, unwilling to give in to fear. But then, one night, Night Window sent a message that chilled me to the bone. I think they're getting closer, they wrote. I can feel them watching me, even when I'm not at home. I saw the figure at work today, standing in the break room. No one else noticed. What do? I hesitated, unsure how to respond. I wanted to tell them it would be okay, that the Watchers couldn't hurt them if they followed the rules. But I knew that wasn't true. The Watchers were unpredictable, their motives unknowable. All I could do was offer support, remind them they weren't alone, stay calm. I wrote, Remember the ritual. If you need to, perform it again. And reach out if you need help. We're here for you." Night Window thanked me, but I could sense their fear growing. Over the next few days, their messages became more frantic, more desperate. They spoke of nightmares, of waking up to find the figure standing at the foot of their bed, of objects moving on their own. They said they felt like they were being hunted. Then, one night, Night Window stopped responding. Their account went dark, their messages unanswered. Another name, another string, cut from the web. I felt a wave of grief and guilt wash over me. I wondered if I could have done more, if I should have warned them to stay away from the game in the first place. But I knew, deep down, that it wouldn't have mattered. The Watchers always found a way in. I started to think more about the network, about the web of connections the Watchers had built. I wondered how many people were out there, living with the Watchers, struggling to survive. I wondered if there was a way to break the chain, to destroy the game once and for all. I reached out to Mara, hoping she might have answers. She replied, her message terse and cautious. "I've been looking into the origins of the game," she wrote. "It's older than we thought. There are stories going back centuries, tales of shadowy figures, of people disappearing after seeing something they shouldn't. The internet just made it easier for them to spread." I asked if she thought there was a way to stop them. "Maybe," she replied, "but it would take all of us, working together. The Watchers feed on isolation, on fear. If we can break that, if we can build a network stronger than theirs, we might have a chance." Her words stuck with me. I started to think about the support group, about the connections we'd built. Maybe that was the key, not fighting the Watchers alone, but standing together, refusing to let them divide us. I proposed the idea to the group. At first, there was skepticism, fear. But slowly, people began to warm to the idea. We started organizing regular meetings, sharing resources, supporting each other. We created a database of stories, rituals, coping strategies. We reached out to new players, offering guidance and reassurance. It wasn't easy. The Watchers pushed back, their presence growing stronger, their tactics more aggressive. Some members disappeared, their accounts wiped clean. Others reported strange occurrences, messages appearing on their screens, objects moving in their homes, nightmares that left them shaken and exhausted. But we persisted. We refused to let the Watchers win. One night, during a group call, Mara shared a new theory. She believed the Watchers were drawn to patterns, to repetition. The more we followed the same routines, the easier it was for them to find us. She suggested we start breaking our habits, changing our schedules, taking different routes to work, rearranging our homes. I tried it, and to my surprise, it helped. The Watchers seemed less present, their gaze less oppressive. I encouraged others to do the same, and many reported similar results. We started to experiment, testing the limits of the Watchers' power. Some members tried confronting the figures directly, performing the ritual in new locations, even inviting others to witness the Watchers' presence. The results were mixed. Sometimes the Watchers retreated, other times they grew more aggressive. But every experiment brought us closer to understanding them. Through it all, I kept writing in my journal, documenting everything that happened. I started to see patterns, connections I hadn't noticed before. The Watchers weren't just feeding on fear, they were feeding on attention, on the energy we gave them. The more we focused on them, the stronger they became. But when we ignored them, when we refused to let them control us, their power waned. I shared my findings with the group, and together we developed new strategies. We practiced mindfulness, meditation, techniques to redirect our attention away from the Watchers. We supported each other, celebrated small victories, mourned losses together. Slowly, things began to change. The Watchers were still there, still watching, but they no longer felt invincible. We had found a way to live with them, to coexist without being consumed. One evening, as I sat in my apartment, I realized I hadn't seen the figure in days. The shadows in the corners were just shadows, the silence just silence. For the first time in months, I felt truly alone, and it was a relief. I called my mom, told her I loved her, promised to visit soon. I met friends for dinner, laughed until my sides hurt. I walked through the city at night, unafraid. But I never forgot the watchers. I never let my guard down completely. I knew they were still out there, waiting for a moment of weakness, a crack in the armor. And every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of the figure in the corner of my eye, a reminder that the game was never truly over. But I was no longer afraid. That it's strange, looking back now, to think about how it all began. A dare, a download, a single click that changed everything. I used to wonder if I could go back, if I'd do it all differently, if I'd listen to the warnings, close the tab, walk away. But the truth is, curiosity is a powerful thing. It's what makes us human, what drives us to explore, to push boundaries, to seek out the unknown. Sometimes, it leads us to places we were never meant to go. I still keep the notebook Mara gave me, tucked away in a drawer with the other relics of that time. A USB drive, a handful of Polaroids, a map covered in names and strings. Sometimes, late at night, I'll take them out and lay them on the table, tracing the lines of my own story, remembering the people I met, the things I learned, the fear I overcame. The support group is smaller now, but stronger. We've lost people along the way, but those who remain are resilient, resourceful, determined. We check in on each other, share updates, offer advice to new members. We've become a family of sorts, bound together by a secret no one else can understand. Every so often, a new name appears in the chat. Someone who's just played the game, who's terrified and alone, convinced they're losing their mind. We welcome them, reassure them, share what we've learned. We tell them they're not alone, that there's hope, that it's possible to live with the Watchers without letting them take over. I've learned to find meaning in the small things, the warmth of sunlight on my face, the sound of laughter, the comfort of a friend's voice on the other end of the line. I've learned that fear doesn't have to control me, that I can choose how to respond, that I can find strength in vulnerability. Sometimes, I still see the figure, not as often as before, and never as close. It stands at the edge of my vision, a silent observer, a reminder of the world I stumbled into. I don't look at it directly. I don't acknowledge it, but I'm not afraid anymore. I know its power comes from my attention, from my fear, from the energy I give it. I choose not to feed it. I've come to accept that the Watchers will always be a part of my life, a shadow I can't quite shake. But I refuse to let them define me. I refuse to let them win. If you're listening to this, if you found yourself drawn to the dark corners of the internet, if you've played a game you shouldn't have, know this: you're not alone. There are others out there, people who understand, people who can help. Reach out. Don't let the Watchers isolate you. Don't let them convince you that you're powerless. Remember the rules. Don't look at them directly. Don't talk about them to people who haven't played. Don't try to record them. And above all, don't let them feed on your fear. If you ever find yourself staring at a blank window, a single line of text asking if you want to see, think carefully before you answer. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. But if you do find yourself marked, if you do find yourself being watched, know that you can survive. You can adapt. You can find others like you. And together, you can build something stronger than fear. I don't know if the Watchers will ever truly go away. Maybe they're a part of us now, a reflection of our own curiosity, our own need to see and be seen. Maybe the game will keep spreading, finding new players, building new webs. Or maybe, one day, we'll find a way to break the chain for good. Until then, I'll keep living my life. I'll keep reaching out to others, offering what help I can. I'll keep watching back. And if you ever see me in a forum, or a chat room, or a crowded city street, if you ever feel like you're being watched and you don't know where to turn, just remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together.